John B. Watson, educational psychologist, 1878-1958, by Paula Hale. Watson's family life. John Watson was born January the 9th, 1878, to Emma Kezia Watson and Pickens Butler Watson, and they lived in Travelers Rest, South Carolina. John was the fourth out of their 6 children. His mother was a very religious woman that wanted nothing more for John to become a minister. We will see later that his mother's dream never came true. Watson's father was an alcoholic and was known for being unfaithful to his wife and family. Watson's father left the family when John was only 13 years old. Watson's family was poor, and after his father left, his mother sold the farm in Travelers Rest and moved to Greenville. Watson's mother was in hopes for more opportunity for her children. Watson's early life. The move to the city did nothing for Watson as far as positive opportunities. In fact, the move had a negative effect on him. Watson was in and out of trouble. He did not do well in school. He was picked on by other children, bullied, and called names such as the dumb farmer boy. But eventually, this led to Watson becoming the bully. The negative impact of Watson's family life sent him into the state of delinquency, with a disabling effect on his education and his motivation. However, his mother, trying to help Watson turn his life around, she had some connections and was able to get him accepted to Furman University in South Carolina at the age of 16. This is where he met Gordon Moore. When Gordon Moore, teacher, mentor, came into his life and introduced him to psychology, this turned Watson's life around. Watson was able to graduate in 5 years at the age of 21 with a master's degree. Early life and education. After Watson received his master's degree, he moved to Chicago and attended the University of Chicago to pursue a doctorate degree in psychology and philosophy. He soon realized that his true passion was psychology and dropped the philosophy. After 3 short years, Watson earned a doctorate degree in psychology in 1903. During this time, Watson began to develop his behavioristic theory. After Watson graduated or had completed his degree, he stayed on at the University of Chicago as a teacher. Working as a teacher, he met his first wife, a student named Mary Amelia Ickles, and they soon were married. And in 1905, they had their first child, a son. Their first child was a daughter, and then they had a son named John several years later. After their first child was born, Watson accepted a position at Johns Hopkins University as a professor of psychology. At the age of 29, when Watson was 31, he became the director of psychology. While working at Johns Hopkins, Watson started an affair with one of his students that caused him to lose his position at Johns Hopkins and end his marriage with Mary in 1920. In 1921, Watson married Rosaline Rayner, the student in which he was having the affair. The couple had 2 children. After losing his position at Johns Hopkins, Watson became a successful advertiser, advertising for products such as Pond's Cold Cream and Maxwell Coffee. In 1913, Watson published his work, Psychology of the Behavioristic View, as the Behavioristic Views It. This article was the beginning of Watson's fame in the field of psychology. Through Watson's research, he developed his philosophy of psychology and called it behavioralism. This meant that Watson believed that one's behavior could be molded around their environment or changed, and their reaction to different stimulus. Their nature was what was molding their behavior, and that their behavior had no influence on the genetics or the nature of the individual. Nurture versus nature. The Little Albert Experiment. In 1920, with the assistance of Rosalind, Watson published his most famous and controversial research of Little Albert. This research or experiment was conditioning of a 9-month-old baby boy by pairing a white rat with a loud, frightening noise. The conditioning caused the child to fear other white furry things. Later in 2009, a research found that the boy, Little Albert, had died at the age of 6 from a medical condition that caused fluid to build up on the child's brain. In 2012, researchers found that Watson may have knowingly misled the boy as normal and healthy, when he may have known of his neurological condition. Achievements and awards. In 1915, Watson served as president of the American Psychological Association. In 1919, Watson published Psychology from the Standpoint of a Behaviorist. In 1925, Watson published Behaviorism. In 1928, he published Psychological Care of Infant and Child. In 1957, Watson received the American Psychological Association's Award for contribution to psychology. Pioneers that influenced. The first pioneer that influenced Watson was Gordon Moore. Gordon Moore was Watson's mentor from Furman University that sparked his interest in philosophy and psychology. However, the professor that pushed him toward psychology was John Dewey, because Watson disagreed with his philosophy, and the disagreement turned his focus on psychology. The biggest influence was Ivan Pavlov, which with his conditioned reflex study about the dog and the conditioning the dog's behavior to drool when it heard a bell, thinking that it was going to get a steak. classical conditioning. Through all of Watson's work, research, and studies, B.F. Skinner followed Watson's behaviorism pathway that has left a lasting impression on psychology today. The last years of Watson. After leaving Johns Hopkins, Watson turned to advertising and quickly became very successful. He was the leading advertiser for major products such as Pond's Cold Cream and Maxwell Coffee. However, after 15 short years of marriage to Rosalind, she passed away from complications of pneumonia. This left Watson devastated, and he turned to alcohol and his work. As he buried himself in his work, Watson published several of his studies and became famous for his arrogant statement, "The dozen healthy infants," which he guaranteed that he could train the infants to become anything, any type of specialist. The nurturing of the child would override the nature and would change the outcome of his behavior. And in 1954, Watson's son William committed suicide, and the pain that Watson suffered caused him to burn and destroy all of his unpublished work. The death of John Watson. September the 25th, 1958, Watson lost his battle with alcoholism at the age of 80. Watson's influence on today. Watson has influenced today's psychology. His behaviorism lost some of its strength during the 1950s. There are many aspects of behaviorism that is still used today in different types of therapy. For example, a problem behavior can be trained to learn a new skill or behavior that will replace the problematic behavior. And of course, the debate is still running strong with the topic of nurture versus nature.